incorporating more smart cards. Mostly, people are using things that they find in the smart card area and incorporating that in the more general purpose chipsets. Reasons for not using a smart card, it adds, again, to the complexity. If you've already got a very complex chip, why not make it a little bit more complex and just have it in one package? One issue is communicating with it. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the card sharing attack in satellite business. If you've got a satellite set-top box and it's got a smart card, all the traffic from the satellite is going to the smart card and then descrambles the keys that are used for the video to descramble it. But how do you get them from the card to the box? Well, over the smart card interface. Now, these keys are only valid for about 10 seconds. So that wasn't much of an issue 15 years ago or 10 years ago. But now with the internet, you can just exchange those keys with your friends. And it's fast enough for them to use those keys to descramble their own video streams. So you see that it's an issue that you can't communicate securely with the smart card unless you're using a secure storage in your CPU again, which brings you basically back to the start. You're making your CPU more look like a smart card. Okay, so that's a little bit of the overview of how chipsets are moving and the security features that you can find in them. So now I move to the side channels. So, well, the basic theory of this is pretty simple. You have so-called, well, hidden or maybe undiscovered channels that equipment is emitting, and those channels may be sending confidential information or things that are related to confidential information. The question is, how do you get the confidential information, those secrets, out of those channels? And that's the theory and practice of side channel attacks. What are those channels? Well, you can have all kinds of them. Like I said, we heard today or yesterday about the timing attacks against databases. From very basic, that you can just have some commands that you make sleep, and then you just have a blind insert. Just you have to wait till the timing is over, and you can distinguish if the command was executed or not. To very specific, where you have in the database a B tree where there are splits in the nodes, very low level, but still sufficient in timing difference that you can distinguish what the database is doing. So what we are looking, and especially what we are looking here in a couple of demo setups I've here, is two things: is power consumption and is electromagnetic radiation. So we'll get to that later. So, does anyone know a sound side channel? Anyone an idea? In the back? No? Well, there was a nice research about typing. If you got a microphone in a room and you can listen into someone typing on a keyboard based on reflections against walls, for instance, and also the timing between your fingers on the keyboard, you can figure out what someone's typing. But another one that I read yesterday, because I was searching a little bit for examples, is a paper by Shamir, where he's listening really at a PC. So you just have a PC, it's running GPG or OpenSSL. In the meter or something, you put high-sensitive audio equipment, and you can actually measure instructions that are happening inside of the CPU of the running PC. So, and it's audio. This is not radiation or something like this. So all kinds of side channels can happen.
Was that audio stuff outside the PC or close to the CPU? You've got disk drives and all kinds of other stuff, right?
They did some experiments with close by and disabled the fans. And they did also experiments with more advanced equipment, I think 1 to 2 meters away. I'm not sure if they also disabled the fans, but they said also when you have very good audio equipment with good analog equalizers, you can also reduce the noise from such very specific noise sources. So probably you could see or hear something. Also in Cambridge, they do a lot of good work in this area, like looking at the ambient light from a display that's reflecting off the wall, and even try to see if you can still make up what's on the screen. So there are a lot of side channels that you don't realize. And actually, yesterday in the Johnny Long talk, just, social side channels, badges, stuff like that. There are so many side channels. In side channel analysis or attacks, we basically distinguish two types. One is the passive, where you just listen in. You just try to determine from the channels that are available to you if you can determine what's happening. The other one is active. Here you're actually using a side channel, like a CPU is dependent on this clock. So if I can somehow fiddle with the clock of it, could I make it do something else that it doesn't expect, that the program doesn't expect, and that may have unpredictable results? Another is voltage. I today will be mainly or exclusively be talking about passive attacks. Well, a couple of simple examples. Timing attack. If a process is taking different time for two decisions, and I can measure the start and end, I can know the decision that was taken. That's the basic premise. Well, we've heard more things about this yesterday. The other one is power. So CPUs, and basically every electronic equipment these days is built up of gates. And gates switch. They switch between ones and zeros and back. And when they do that, they consume power. They consume power because they have leak currents. They consume power because they have to charge and discharge capacitors. Once a clock is switching, on that moment that the clock switches, all these gates become active. And they become active in a kind of an avalanche process until they're all done. And that's probably way before the next clock cycle even. And then on the next edge of the clock, or maybe the next up edge, they do their process again. And what you see is a profile like is drawn in the picture. You get a kind of spike at the start when every gate starts to be active, and then slowly it dies out. And the profile of that measurement actually says something about the number of gates that has been switching. And if your CPU is doing something related to a program or data, then that power profile will be related to that data. So the question is, how can you get the information out of there? The same thing you can do with electromagnetic field. Electromagnetic field is related to the power consumption. It's, the magnetic field is proportional. The electromagnetic field is a derivative of it. But what's important is that you can pick up that field with a coil. And that's something we've here in the setup. So you see, what you see in the image is a bit difficult to see because it's like in an XY table, but I have it here in a smaller setup. So this thing is the probe, which is actually measuring the field and amplifying it. I forgot one thing. What's interesting about this field measurement is that it gives you something extra compared to the power measurement. While it's completely directly related to the power, the fact that you now are not tied to a wire going into your chip and coming back out, which is kind of one-dimensional, you now have a field in, well, actually 3 dimensions. Because you want to have a strong signal as possible, you generally want to be as close as possible to the CPU, but you still have the 2-dimensional layout of the chip to place your sensor and to have measurements that may be difficult to see on the 1-dimensional input-output of the power of the chip. So it might give you some edge on that field. Okay, so the question of getting from that signal to, well, your secret keys, basically. The first thing is the probe that I showed that you need. You can do it in power, measure current through a resistor. Then you need a scope. There's one here. It's a USB scope. It's a bit more expensive than the one shown yesterday. I'm not sure if you saw the talk about the wireless devices. This scope is about, I think, 1,500 euros, something like this. So it's a 200 megahertz mega sample scope and a bandwidth about 100 megahertz. So that's what we will be using in the measurements. You may need an amplifier, depends on the signal that you're measuring. In this case, for the EM field, we definitely do one in this probe, which has been specifically made for this purpose. I'm not even sure if we have amplification in the power reader. And then, in the end, you have a computer where you do all your processing. That's basically the hard work, because there you have to do all your mathematics, your statistics, to get the results. So I've got some test equipment here, which is a very advanced board. It's actually something called an Amstrad E3 Meter. And the cool thing about it is that it was, in the UK, it was, I think, 10 pounds in the stores. It's a Linux board. It has a color LCD, a camera, a USB keyboard, a phone. And the trick was they were selling it because you had to dial into a fixed number. And that's the only thing that it could do. And so they were collecting the income from that. The reason I liked it is because it was having an OMAP processor, which is a predecessor to what's currently in a lot of the mobile phones these days. This is, so compared to the slow and unsecure version of what's in your mobile phone. And you can run Linux on it, so you can do your own development. We are actually not running Linux. We are just running a very small test program that can do a DES and an RSA. So the start was that we just first show what you can hear. If you just put something that you can listen with. So what it is, it's a normal hand scanner that you can tune. And what we do, we tune it to the clock frequency. So this is 150 megahertz. And then you just put it on AM or FM. And as an antenna, we use a very simple loop antenna, which is a bit of coax, and then you just have the core in a loop, and that's it. So Jasper, my assistant.
I think I should put it on this microphone, maybe.
Probably, yeah. Oh, let's try that. So, let me plug in and plug out. So initially it's off.
Can you hook up this microphone?
It's live. Oh, okay. It's live. So, and this is just Linux booting. So this is what it sounds like if you boot Linux. So the point being that there's a lot of information there. You can already hear it. Apparently there's something that's related to what's happening inside. And everyone knows it because of your GSM going blah, 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 blah. It's the same kind of thing, but then in near field, which is very close to the chip. And it's very simple. Maybe we can also do the FM, because